Good evening and good morning from Sydney. I would like to thank the organizer of this symposium to invite me to participate in this event. I'm speaking from the land of Gadigal and Wango people of the Eora Nation and pay my respect to the elders of the past and present and the emerging generations of the First Nation people. The collection and the exhibition of Chinese ceramics at the Art Gallery of New South Wales began in the late 19... Can't change my slide. It's frozen, okay. The collection and the exhibition of Chinese ceramics at the Art Gallery of New South Wales began in the late 19th century and have continued to the present day. The gallery's ceramic holdings cover a wide range of artifacts made from fired clays for practical, decorative, and ritual use, dated from the Neolithic period to contemporary time. Chinese ceramic collections make up half of the modest near 1,500 pieces of Chinese works at the institution. Historically, Australian museums and the gallery's Asian collection had been very much influenced by the West, especially by the taste of the British elite and the institutions, such as the V&A and the British Museum, particularly. The New South Wales Academy of Art, one of the earliest names of the art gallery, received its very first works of Asian art in 1879, 8 years after its establishment. They included a group of Japanese ceramics, bronzes, cloisonné enamels, and lacquerwares, which were shown in the Sydney International Exhibition held in the autumn of 1879 and later gifted by the Japanese government. As it was pointed out by the former director, the late Edmund Capon, they were seen as, quote, objects of curiosity and emblems of an exotic and unknown culture. They were admired for their mysterious unfamiliarity and their technical dexterity, unquote. This observation extends to the early Chinese collection as well. Most collecting of the Chinese works of art in early 20th century was related to a chinoiserie fashion amongst the Sydney's elite. Hence, a good number of ceramics were acquired as interior decorations by local individuals and then bequested to AGNSW. Among these donations, Captain Eadie's bequest in 1921 was the largest. George W. Eadie, a native of Sydney, was a captain of the China Navigation Company. During his 25 years living and traveling in China, he developed a hobby of collecting rare Chinese porcelain. His Chinese collection was considered as one of the finest in Australia. The Sydney Morning Herald of April 19 of 1921 reported that on the occasion of his last visit to Sydney, Mr. Eadie placed many of his choicest pieces in the National Art Gallery, another name in the early years of the Art Gallery of New South Wales, where they have been a center of great attraction to connoisseurs during the past 9 months. Interestingly enough, the director of the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne, Lindsay Bernard Hall, was sent to Sydney by the trustees to the auction of Captain Eadie's collection on October 11, 1921, to purchase works for the NGV. He is also the English artist who painted the connoisseur painting in my title slide. Other individuals, collectors also made great contributions, not only to the number of Chinese ceramic collection at the gallery, but also to fostering an interest in Chinese art. I would like to mention 2 of them, Sidney Cooper and Hapen Myrtle. Michael Cooper was from Selborne, Hampshire, England, who lived in Beijing from 1934 to 1940 and built a Chinese art collection of antiquity. In 1941, he showed his collection, mostly ceramics, under the title The Englishman's Home at the David Jones department store in Sydney. The event inspired the local artist Anne Gilmore Rees to create this print, Chinese Interlude. It's on the left in the slide. Unfortunately, the terracotta horse in the drawing was later found out to be a fake. In 1961, the Cooper's collection was shown at the AGNSW, and a year later, he donated a large number of his collection to the gallery, mainly ceramics, including Han and Tang tomb figures. It had been pointed out that there was a marked increase in activities among Sydney's collectors in Asian and Chinese art in the following years. One of these activities is the exhibition entitled Chinese Ceramics, held from August 11th to September the 12th in 1965 at Art Gallery of New South Wales. This was the first exhibition of Chinese ceramics staged by a public museum in Australia. The exhibition was organized by the so-called Gaoling Hui, a small society formed in early 1960s by 4 ceramic enthusiasts who devoted their time, themselves to the study and the debate of Chinese porcelain. Mr. John Hepburn Myrtle was the most active member among them. And he is the gentleman in my slide on the left. J.H. Myrtle was trained in engineering at City and Guilds College, London, and worked for his whole life for the Morgan Crucible Company Limited, a technically oriented manufacturing company. He moved to Australia with his family in 1942 on an urgent wartime project for Morgan and lived here until his death in 1998. According to the obituary written by Jackie Menzies, former head of the Asian department at the gallery, Myrtle had encyclopedic knowledge of the wide variety of Chinese ceramics types. Many of the pieces in his collection were found from antique shops and auction houses in England. He developed a long and pleasant association with AGNSW, becoming the honorary advisor on Sydney Cooper collection of Chinese art in 1962, and a trustee of the gallery between 1963 and 1976. He purchased many fine pieces of Chinese porcelain for the gallery and donated 70 pieces of his own porcelain collection to the gallery. Myrtle also organized 2 special exhibitions on Ming and Qing porcelains in 1977 and 1980, respectively. The former one was considered the former one coincided with the blockbuster traveling exhibition, the Chinese exhibition, a selection of recent archaeological finds of the People's Republic of China that traveled to 3 major cities in Australia, Melbourne, Sydney, and Adelaide. Although the accompanied catalogs of these 2 exhibitions, which you can see on the screen, they were quite small and not fully illustrated. They provided in-depth knowledge of the Ming and Qing porcelain on both its historical background and interpretations of some motifs in the decoration. Technical information on the manufacture of and the landmarks on the porcelain were given in great detailed explanations. As Jackie Manzi commented, these shows were important for documenting Australian holdings of Chinese porcelain and guiding private collectors in the development of their own. One of these collectors who were influenced and mentored by Myrtle was Dr. Yin Cao, the gentleman in the middle on the, in the left, in the slide on the left side. Dr. Clark's interest in monochrome and odd-shaped porcelain led his passion to collect and study the Qing Dynasty altar vessels. From early 2000s, he started to learn Chinese and enrolled at the Macquarie University in Sydney. To deepen his research, he undertook postgraduate research at Peking University, and in 2015, he completed his PhD study. In 2019, he published the catalog for the Chinese University of Hong Kong Museum's exhibition For Blessings and Guidance, the Qianlong Emperor's Designs for State Sacrificial Vessels, which included his own study collection of imperial state ritual or paraphernalia that he donated to the museum. He has become one of the authorities on this subject and is very active in academic discussions on the related topics. Collecting and exhibiting Chinese art entered a very active period between 1978 and 2011 at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, with the arrival of a new director, Edmund Capon, who was very passionate on Chinese history and art. Born in England, Edmund received his training in Chinese art and archaeology at London University's SOAS and held the position of assistant keeper in Far Eastern Action at the section at the Victoria and Albert Museum before coming to Sydney. During Edmund's tenure, the AGNSW became the leading institution in Australia in promoting Chinese art and culture. The gallery organized 13 traveling exhibitions from China between 1981 and 2011, added 2 Asian galleries, and one part of the Lower Asia Gallery is dedicated to Chinese art. A special fund was also set up to purchase Chinese artworks. Although Edmund had a very broad knowledge and interest in Chinese art, when it came to ceramics, he was more interested in tomb figures than porcelain wares. As a matter of fact, even when he was at V&A, he published a small booklet, Chinese Tomb Figures, in 1976 for Her Majesty's Stationery Office. The very first piece of art he bought for the art gallery upon his arrival in 1978 was this Tang Dynasty sculpture of a horse and a rider, which is a small picture on the, in the center. It was followed by more than a dozen of tomb figures from the Han and Tang dynasties that entered the gallery's collection in the coming years. In 1983, an exhibition of early Chinese art was launched with a good number of Han and Tang dynasty Mingqi, including the early donation from Sidney Cooper. It is worth noting that the curator, Jackie Manzi, even included a set of standing musicians that were copies of Tang dynasty pieces in this exhibition. This gave her an opportunity to introduce the thermoluminescence dating method for identifying fakes in the booklet, serving as a catalog for the exhibition. Ceramics continue to be prominent in the gallery's permanent collection displays from 1990, when the Asian collection started to have its own dedicated homes. The first, the Lower Asian Gallery, and then Upper Asian Gallery, which was opened in 2003. Chinese ceramics were displayed in both galleries, including export wares occupying a large part of Upper Asia's long case. In the past decade, since I joined the gallery in 2011, both collecting and exhibiting of Chinese art have maintained the momentum with the support of the new director, Dr. Michael Brand, Although the gallery still aims to collect exceptional examples of historical art from China, with the high prices of Chinese historical art on the market, as well as the gallery's more strict regulation on provenance, it is not easy to acquire ideal pieces. In order to continue to promote Chinese historical art, we have actively engaged with museums and cultural institutions in Greater China and brought high quality antiquities to be shown at the gallery. 3 traveling exhibitions have been brought from mainland China and Taiwan since 2013. And some fine examples in ceramic history were the important components of the exhibition. On the other hand, contemporary works, including contemporary ceramics, reflecting the complexity, vitality, and diversity of today's Chinese art, become more welcoming in both acquisitions and exhibitions. In organizing permanent collection exhibitions, more general themes are applied to encourage the dialogue between the historical and the contemporary art. For example, in the Conversations Through the Asian Collections exhibition 2014 to 15, historical monochrome porcelains were shown together with Liu Jianhua's container series to demonstrate the continuity of Chinese ceramic culture and encourage viewers to reflect upon Chinese tradition. Ai Weiwei and Xu Zhen's works were mixed with historical ceramic to evoke a sense of humor. In recently opened exhibition, The Way We Eat, both historical and contemporary ceramics are presented under the themes of essential, exchange, and enchanted. A group of ceramics utensils dated from the Neolithic period to early 20th century showcases the rich history of producing ceramic in China, where the world's oldest pottery fragments have been found. Its evolution over millennia demonstrates the innovation and perfection of technology in modeling, decorating, glazing, and firing. Contemporary artists such as Liu Jianhua and Liu Xiaoxian have drawn on this history, repurposing ceramics to express contemporary ideas with the help of workshops that have operated for centuries. Chinese ceramics are particularly significant in the history of global trade, fueling obsessions, demand, and design innovations in many parts in the world. In the section exchange in the exhibition, Changsha ware, Prague ware, Zhangzhou Sawatu ware, and Bencherong ware that were responsible for exporting ceramics wares to Asia, Africa, and Europe are on display, exploring Chinese long history of creating ceramics to appeal to specific international markets. Ritual bronzes and Han and Tang Dynasty and Mingqi ceramic are used to give examples in explaining the idea that in all societies, sharing food is a primary way of initiating and maintaining human relationships. The preparation and consumption of food can also be a ceremonial act charged with symbolic importance. In ancient China, food was offered to ancestors and deities, as well as the deceased. 5 fun gold-shaped porcelain bottles are shown together with ink painting to introduce the metaphoric and the symbolic meanings of food beyond their gastronomic function. In 2020, the gallery put on an exhibition entitled Under the Star to mark the 250 years since Britain's Captain James Cook landed at what became known as Botany Bay, only a few kilometers from the art gallery now stands. The exhibition took a historical approach to highlight the commonalities and the connections in our shared attempts to understand the night sky and our place in relation to it. I introduced the Chinese-Australian artist Guan Wei's ceramic works, Return to the Origin, to the curators of the show. And here's the label for the two works. Guan Wei was often looked to the constellations in the sky, recalling their mystical interpretations in stellar lines of connection and the magical creatures. Here he conjures them again when pointing to the chaotic and exhausting pace of modern life. He asks us to free our hearts and return to the origin, to look to the stars and see in them the potential for infinite freedom and happiness. With very positive feedback, I managed to acquire 3 of Guan Wei's works in this series for the collection when the show was over, including the 2 in the exhibition. In conclusion, looking back at the centenary of collecting and exhibiting Chinese ceramics at AGNSW, we could see both private initiatives and institutional policy have played important roles in the presentations on this subject. Professor Craig Clunas once used the phrase ceramics as the flowering of Chinese art when he described the Chinese art scene in UK in the interwar years and afterwards. Sydney was very much influenced by this trend through its close ties with the UK. Generations of collectors and connoisseurs made great contributions to build the collection at our gallery and laid the foundation of knowledge on Chinese ceramics. In recent years, however, the shift of the gallery's focus has enabled visitors to enjoy the exquisite beauty of Chinese ceramics, old and new, while contemplating the social and political issues facing all of us. Thank you.